Good afternoon to everyone, or should I say good morning for people that come from the Americans like myself, I think this way, or good night for people that come from East Asia, probably this way. Okay, sorry, I'm practicing my social emotion skills. Well, talking about social emotion skills, this thing has always been a centerpiece in the right to education. But it seems that it's becoming even more important these days, and probably in the future is becoming even more important. So let me show you some, let me try to convince you that it has always been very important and that it's becoming even more important. If you're already convinced, I can give you some extra evidence and information on that, okay? So let's start 25 centuries ago in ancient Greece with Aristotle. He was saying that educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. So it seems that the social emotion, the development of the social emotion competence has always been central to education. There's nothing really new. But if you fast forward and we come to a recent speech by Dalai Lama, he was saying that it's vital to educate the hearts by nurturing the compassion of people. So the idea of developing social emotion competence was in ancient Greece, and it's present today in our great philosophers, but is this just a piece of philosophy, or it's really down to earth on our schools? Or, okay, before we go to the schools, let's look to what our politicians promise every day. And if we look to what we have been promising, if we start with the Declaration of Human Rights, there is one article in the Declaration that says, what's the goal of education? And that article reads like that. That's the only article in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that talks about the objective of education and says the objective of the education is the full development of the human personality and to promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship. So the Declaration of Human Rights, it's very clear that education is about also to the development of the social emotion competences. But was this declaration lost in time? No. If we go to the last World Summit in Incheon on South Korea, you can see that they were very concerned about quality education for all over the entire life cycle, and they say that quality of education should promote interpersonal and social skills, values, and attitudes. So all the time, and during the past, at least the past 25 centuries, the development of social emotion competence has always been at the center of education. Education without the social emotion competence is not education at all. And to present this to you in a very nice way, I bring here a very short video that I think it's very illuminating.
When a child is born, we do everything we can to protect them, nurture them, love them. A child's heart and mind are fragile. As they grow, we want to teach them everything we know. We send them to school to fill their minds with wonderful knowledge, to give them the tools they need for life. At school, they get a taste of what things are like in the world outside. There is friendship, romance, disappointment, embarrassment, discrimination, and bullying. But are the tools we give them enough to prepare them for this world? We have an enormous responsibility and an amazing opportunity. If we truly want to prepare them for the world outside, we must also educate the heart. Because to navigate the world outside with compassion, acceptance, and tolerance, we need to teach them compassion, acceptance, and tolerance. This can begin in our schools, and it can start today. It can happen at hockey practice, dance class, at day camps, and music lessons. And it's already happening around the world with astonishing results. If we want our children to grow into socially and emotionally capable young people, we must ask for a balanced education that puts importance on educating both the mind and the heart.
Okay, I think this video and what I said before tell us that the development of social and emotion competence, it's at the heart of the education. So it's one of the objectives, it's one of the ends of education, okay? But beyond being one of the major ends of education and having a value in itself, the development of social and emotion competence have shown to have a tremendous impact on the life of people as a mean to achieve whatever we plan for. For people to have the life they choose, the social and emotion competence as central, okay? So let me show you a little bit of evidence on that, okay? So consider two little boys that they were friends and they were median. So they were in this, their academic achievement were median, so they were actually in the position 50 in a school with 100 students, okay? And we are going to take one of them, and we actually do that doing experimentation. We take one of them and bring to a school. They have a social and emotion program, okay? And then we're going to bring this child back to the school 1 year later and look to the academic achievement of this friend of him, okay? They were equally median in the beginning. We moved them, one of them to the school that have a social and emotion program, and then we bring this guy back, where this guy will be in this position. Remember, number one is the guy that know more, so he has to move in that direction, and he actually move to this point if he has access to a well-structured social and emotion program. If this program is well implemented, he can go to this position, okay? And we have more than 100 very carefully done experimental design evaluations that show that this is very robust. So beyond being of intrinsic value, the social and emotion competence are very important for people to learn math, language, and other stuff. But it's important for everything in life. So if we now take a person, just to talk about life expectancy, if we compare the life expectancy of a person with a median level of social and emotion skills, okay, and we compare that with a person that is in the top decile of the distribution in terms of conscientiousness, meaning that the person knows very much how to do self-management. It's a very persistent person. It's a person that knows exactly how to concentrate the attention and be focused. If that person has this high level of persistence and focus, that person will move in that way in the life expectancy ladder, okay? So, and we can go on and show that if you look at the longevity of marriage, if you think this is important, social and emotion also increase the duration of marriage and also improve your occupation attainment, okay? So the question is, okay, the social and emotion skills are seems to be very important for it's a value, it's an end of education, and seems to be a means for people to attain very important realizations in life. Is this getting more important over time? Okay, I organized here some evidence from a sample of 400 or 500 firms in the US. Okay, it's not a random sample, it's not representative. It's a bunch of firms that actually answered the question. But it's intriguing that we have separated here the skills that are important today and the skills that are not even important today. And these are the skills that are going to be important or expected to be important in 5 years from now. And these are the ones that are not supposed to be very important 5 years from now. You can see that all that are important today and probably even more important 5 years from now are all light blue, and they are all applied skills. The basic knowledge is becoming kind of less important. And what are those things? Well, since this is from the US, learning a foreign language was not important in the past, and now they say, well, it's become important to know a foreign language. But what are those skills here? And the skills here are this, and you can see here on the top, collaboration. Certainly collaboration is something that's very important today, and it's probably even more important in 5 years from now. You can see leadership, and you can see diversity. Appreciate diversity and be able to deal with diversity and acknowledge diversity is something that's becoming increasingly important, and everybody in the labor market is saying, well, I need people that can deal with diversity. Okay? And that's a skill that it's becoming even more important as the world gets globalized. Okay? So it seems there is another study here that asks what are the less common skills and most desirable skills. And in this region here, we have the what they call the sweet spot, which is the less common and more desired skills. And what they are: strategic thinking, leadership, and communication skills. These are the skills that are rare and most desirable. Okay? And these are essentially social emotion skills. So we are kind of moving from a society that values knowledge to a society that values how to put knowledge to work. Okay? So it seems that these skills are getting more important. Well, the next question is, okay, suppose I convince you that this is becoming really important. Can this be done? Can we really develop the social and emotional skills of kids in school by teachers, by the teachers that we have now? Well, let me show you now. These two girls, they are median in terms of their social and emotional skills. And I take one of them. I have two of them here, but there are one in front of the other one, so you can only see one, but there are two. There are two girls here. I'm going to take one, move to a school that have a social and emotional program for 1 school year, and bring that child back and see where that median social and emotion girl will look like 1 year later. And the diagram is that. If it's a well-implemented program, there is more than 100 experimental design evaluations showing that this can move the child from here to here. So it's possible to develop the social and emotional competence of children. You really need well-structured. Teachers are all the time changing and modifying the social and emotional skills of kids. But we need a well-structured, explicit, and intentional programs to make this more effective. Okay? Do we need to change schools? Well, let me think about this. If we look to health, this was health in the 20th century, okay? And we agree that health has changed dramatically over the century, okay? If we look to the stock market, and that was the stock market in the 19th century, and in the 21st century, it's a completely different place, okay? Well, if we look to education, what happens to education? Well, education in the 19th century was like this. A bunch of students, one line behind the other ones, all paying attention to the teacher, was focused on teaching, not on learning. And what happens over these 2 centuries? Well, it looks like nothing was really going on. And we were actually organizing schools in the same way, and we get rich and poor countries, and they're all the same, okay? It doesn't matter if you are in the US or Germany or Cuba or Tanzania, you get the same thing, okay? The idea is for developing the social and emotion competences in a productive way, do we need a new education, a new way to do education? Probably yes, okay? It looks like we need a much more interactive way of doing education. We need more participation, we need more engagement, and we need to concentrate much more on learning than teaching, and allowing for diversity to pops up, okay? Thank you very much.
Two questions. One, what was the age of the kids in the experiment? And the second one is, can it be applied to adults also? The improvement in the social skills?
What's the second question?
Can it be applied to adults?
Oh.
To us?
Okay. So the kids, it's all ages. It's what we call meta-analysis. So we are mixing 100 different studies, and they come from different ages, but they are very concentrated on children from 7 to 14, let's say. Okay, if the social and emotion skills can be taught to adults, I hope so, and mainly because politicians across the globe, they need some, and educators need a lot of them to actually teach children the social emotion. So I think it's possible, but that's a different kind of evidence, and I don't have it here.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the interesting talk. My question would be, could you please give us an example of a well-structured and well-implemented socio-emotional learning program?
Okay. Well, if there is no lack of a very good social and emotion programs, okay? In the US, they have an organization called CASEL, C-A-S-E-L, and they have ranked social emotion programs, so they can provide you with a list of them. If you go to Australia, they have a very nice way organizing this. They have another thing that they call Kids Matter, which is a kind of a site where you can see all kinds of programs available in the world. If you go to Brazil, the institute I work with have developed some programs. So probably you have programs well structured like this all over the world. all of them needs a lot of teach training. So actually, you have to spend considerable amount of money for give a better training to teachers. It's almost 1 hour of training for each hour of class, more or less. So to some extent, it could be a little bit expensive because of all the training that it's involved. Okay, but after you get well-trained teachers, then thing goes. But the amount of well-structured material, it's amazing. So it's a kind of a revolution that's already going on around the world.
I'm going to ask the question first, and then I'll give some feedback onto it. Is that what role does resiliency play in this particular piece of it? I know that there's two different theories to it. One is you're born with it, and one is kind of drawn out of you by players that can be involved with you. And what role also in the resilience model then does the way, and I can speak on behalf of the U.S., is this exodus of vocational training schools and vocational programs and things that are that once were that are kind of gone at this point, and now there's this resurgence. What roles does it play, and what kind on the socio-emotional factors of a child as they're growing up and saying, well, gosh, I don't do that well with math and science, but man, I can turn a wrench like no tomorrow. So if you could speak a little bit about the resilience model and how that works, and why is it that we are starting to see this emergence of the resiliency coming out of the kid rather than just being born with it?
Okay, let me answer you in a slight different way. I think we should not have a receipt about, we should not have a list of skills, social and emotional skills that we want children to develop. I think that's a choice of each society, community. So some societies, and I'm very in favor of resilience, and I think it's very important, but other societies may think imagination or openness to diversity, it's much more important than resilience, because in their context, resilience is not very important. If you were dealing with a population that would be suffering for a lot of hardship, resilience would be extremely important. But if we're talking about a group of children from very, very rich neighborhoods or rich families, probably resilience would be important. It's important for everybody, but imagination and creativity may be more important. So I would say that the evidence supports that whatever skill, whatever competence you want to develop on children, it is possible to do it. And there are people that have designed programs to do it, okay? But I would be afraid of saying that all kids, there is a kind of a package of skills that we should deliver to all kids, okay? I would leave this for the definition of the curriculum for every different community. Myself, I would include resilience as a major component or wherever I go, but if they don't think it's important, to me it's okay.
Hello. You said before about taking the child out to do a social emotional program. Do you recommend that children then do a separate program rather than embedding it into their daily routine in the classroom or what they do anyway?
Well, no, certainly the social emotion competences, it's very important to be done. All evidence is that it's very important to be done inside the school, inside the classroom, by their own teacher, okay? There is some debate to what extent you should separate a time slot to say, now we are going to do social and emotion stuff. Or should we mix this with a history class or a literature class or something. Typically, a well-structured program allows you to have a separate slot or allow you to merge. Typically, when you are dealing with a very small children, a very low-age children, you have separate slots. If you try to do that for high school, tends to be a disaster. So in the high school, you have to mix this with some other classes because they will not tolerate, in general, to have a class on dealing with stress or dealing with creativity or imagination. They want this to be mixed with other things. So in general, programs tend to move from separate classes to classes that are integrated into traditional areas as you go up in the age scale.
Hi there. I represent a charitable organisation that's been operating over 60 years now, and we deliver non-formal education to develop skills such as these. And in our time that we've been delivering, one thing, despite our own research, we found it's been very difficult to engage with principals, school owners, and even at policymaker level. How do you suggest then, until non-formal education, i.e. developing these skills, is taken as seriously as formal education, how do we start implementing this to be taken as seriously as formal education?
Well, I would say that's the answer, right? The point is what they're doing is not education at all. So if the education is not really including the social emotion, you can convince them either by looking to what Aristotle said or just looking at what's in the human rights. So if you provide an education to children that's not including the social emotion, you are just not providing a full development of human, the human person. So it's not really education what they are providing. So so let's say it seems to be working in Brazil, where people are becoming increasingly clear that teachers are affecting children's social and emotion skills every day, all the time, because it's impossible to interact with people without affecting their social and emotion competences. So any interaction will have this effect. To have this effect in a way that you don't know exactly what's the outcome, you don't have control over the techniques and so on, it's not a good idea. So we should incorporate and integrate the social emotion, the development of social emotion competence in education, because education was never thought as not including this. In Chile, or at least in Brazil and Latin America, that's become completely, increasingly clear to governments that this is part of education and should be included in education. I think if you try to convince government that this should be a separate program, so you do the knowledge stuff inside the school and you do the development of social emotion competence outside school, that's much more it's not clear that is the best arrangement. It may be a good arrangement, it may not be a good arrangement. And one thing that we also know about the development of social and emotion competence is that if the teacher tells you something during that period of time, okay, so he said, well, you should be nice, careful, listen to people, and when people are talking, you just listen, and you should be assertive and so on. And then he's giving another class and he doesn't allow you to talk. He doesn't ask you questions and things like that. Or if he's okay, but the school is not okay, then the children will not learn, because this is kind of skills that you have to practice, and it's very important in the entire school to get in the mood that they are developing this thing. So it's very important to engage parents, because if the children go home and they see a completely different world, they say, wow, this skills only function inside the school. They should function also in the family, in the community, and so on. So children need these skills to be functioning outside the classroom and outside the school. Okay, but it's very important to be taught by the teacher, because it requires a lot of interaction with the children and the teachers. Mainly in the first grades, they have a lot of interaction with the children, so it's the best place and the best time to do it.
Can I still ask,
Okay.
or time's over? One more? Okay, thank you. I would like to still ask one question, if possible. I've been in the morning in a discussion among decision makers, policy makers on education, well, the big focus was on knowledge among teachers, like teachers should be prepared to pass on knowledge, and also on the fact that many teachers are already overburdened with curriculum and with all the stuff that they receive to pass on. At the same time, the call for educational reform is one of the hardest in any country to move towards an education reform. To move from a teacher that is teaching and not that is facilitating a learning process. I wonder how you imagine really to get this as a policy and also to gain a scale, so that really these competencies, social-emotional competencies, which are really key, could really be accessible by all children and young people who are part of a learning process.
Well, I think it's very important for teachers to know what they're teaching, so knowledge is very important. But if we focus more on learning than teaching, it's probably even more important to create an environment where children can learn. So they can, these days they can learn almost by themselves if we give them enough space, enough tools, and so on. To make this is not expensive. So if you, it doesn't require complicated materials or anything. It requires to train teachers, but mainly it requires teachers to be engaged on this, because teachers may say, well, I'm already doing too many things, so I don't want to do this too. But the question is that to convince them that they are already doing this, because they are already having to deal with the entire class and all the problems around the class. They cannot ignore all the problems around the class. So they will be a better math or language teachers if they do some of this stuff and they get trained on this stuff. In many countries like Australia or Canada, or to some extent the US, they have already implemented that in large scale. Canada and Australia mainly. So it is possible. We have to make this less expensive, but the main cost of this is actually teach teachers how to do it. Okay, thank you very much.